Maya Ellington had never imagined that the moment that would shake the entire world awake would begin with a sentence as sharp as a blade. "Mom, stand up right now." 2 seconds, that was all it took to slice through the first-class cabin, which had been silent like a church. Seat 1A froze, as if someone had just dropped a truth no one wanted to see. Maya looked up, her deep, dark eyes reflecting the icy face of Lauren Mitchell, the lead flight attendant of Atlantic Skies, who stood there with a stiff smile and a gaze that had already delivered its verdict. Maya's heart skipped a beat, not out of fear, but because of something achingly familiar, the feeling of being judged before she even had the chance to speak. Her $8,000 gray suit was lightly wrinkled from a long day, but it was the heavy, wordless silence of the entire cabin that made her feel suffocated. Maya had booked seat 1A. It was a late flight after a day packed with meetings, and all she wanted was quiet. But that quiet shattered when Lauren leaned in, her voice low, but razor sharp. "This seat has been reassigned to another passenger. Please move." No explanation, no proof, if only an order, as if Maya's skin and face had already written the rest of the story. Maya took a slow breath, trying to steady her heartbeat. Anger was pushing her to stand, to question, to fight back immediately, but she knew the trap too well. Anger, when it came from a woman of color, was always translated into something else, threatening, disrespectful, out of control. She straightened her back, her voice soft but unwavering. "I would like to verify that information. This is my seat." Lauren smiled, not the kind of smile meant for joy, but the kind reserved for someone clinging to authority. "There is nothing left to verify. The passenger needs to be seated immediately." That was when the phones came out. Cameras lifted. Tiny flashes flickered like knives cutting through skin. People did not want the truth. They wanted drama. They wanted the narrative, the disruptive black woman. Maya felt every stare land on her like a stone. An elderly woman curled her lip. A man muttered, "Here we go again." A young guy frowned, tilting his camera to capture the perfect moment. Maya wanted to say, "I own 49% of this airline," but that thought died before reaching her tongue. If she said it, the story would end. No one would have to reveal who they truly were. She needed them to expose themselves. It was the only way change ever happened. And destiny, as if waiting for the exact second, delivered a man who entered like a gust of dark wind. Bradley Cooper. A $30,000 suit, the arrogant gaze of someone who had always been treated like royalty, and the posture of a man unfamiliar with the word no. "I have waited long enough," Bradley said loudly, making sure the entire cabin heard him. "This is my seat." Maya looked at him for a second, then another, and suddenly understood. This was no longer about a seat. It was about social hierarchy. He looked at her the same way he might look at an item placed in the wrong aisle, an inconvenience that needed removal. "I am a platinum customer, I sit here." In this world, sometimes, a sentence from a white man carried more weight than the truth from anyone else. No one asked to see Bradley's ticket. No one checked a code. No one verified anything. They just nodded. They believed. They obeyed. "Please stand up," Lauren repeated now, as rigid as cold steel. Maya felt her heartbeat slow down, so slow that her body seemed to be protecting her heart from breaking. Because this moment was one she had lived 100 times in boardrooms, hotels, taxis, places where she had to prove she deserved to exist there. A wave of memories surged through her. Her mother scrubbing someone else's floors to pay for her daughter's schooling. Her grandmother forced to sit at the back of the bus during segregation, Both women had taught her that silence was not weakness, it was strategy, the strategy of those forced to survive in a world that always chose the powerful. Maya rose, slowly, too slowly to be called cooperative, just fast enough to avoid being grabbed. Good Bradley muttered, as if her standing proved his righteousness. And the moment Maya stepped out of seat 1A, the air in the cabin loosened. People settled back, satisfied, as though they had extinguished some kind of spark. But they had no idea the spark was sitting right in Maya's palm. She pulled her small suitcase and walked toward the back of the cabin. She heard whispers. No manners, serves her right, always wanting special treatment. Maya did not turn around. She did not need to. She had already seen enough to rewrite the future of this airline, and when she sat in seat 22B, recording every insult, every triumphant smirk, every moment they believed she was powerless, Maya understood clearly her silence was not surrender. It was a declaration of war, a war no one would notice until it was far too late. Maya opened her laptop, placed her fingers on the keyboard, and in that cabin, filled with the hum of air vents, a small revolution began forming. No one knew. No one saw. No one sensed it. But there in row 22, in a cramped seat that smelled faintly of cheap perfume, Maya Ellington made her decision. They had chosen the wrong woman to humiliate. And for the first time, the sky chose her side. As the plane trembled lightly, while rolling toward the runway, Maya Ellington sat in the cramped seat, 22B, her shoulders brushing against two strangers, yet her mind was already far beyond the economy cabin, far beyond the contemptuous stares that had pierced her skin like needles. The sky outside the window was a dull blur, but inside her a silent storm was forming, a storm born not from nature, but from the heart of a woman who had endured more than enough. Her hand trembled slightly as she opened her laptop, not from weakness, but from adrenaline, from a mind running at the speed only understood by those who have been pushed to the edge. And when the cursor blinked on the screen, the emails poured out like the first bolts of lightning, announcing a coming storm. Jordan, I need the full records of flight. TA447, from JFK to Heathrow passenger manifest crew files, camera footage, internal logs, send them the moment this plane lands. She sent another email. Richard, 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, at the Executive Lounge conference room in Heathrow. Summon the entire board, Chief Executive Officer, Daniel Mercer, Lead Flight Attendant, Lauren Mitchell, all relevant crew, mark it as mandatory. Then an email to Tyler Brooks. You are the only one who stood on the side of truth tonight. I need a detailed testimony timeline, exact words, exact actions of every individual involved. Deliver within 2 hours. With each keystroke, Maya felt herself returning to who she truly was. Sharp, calculating, precise. Because if they had chosen the wrong woman to humiliate, then they had also chosen the wrong woman to expect forgiveness from. This reckoning would involve no negotiation. The plane lifted off the ground, the engines humming steadily, but Maya did not blink. She was thinking about Lauren, the relief in the woman's eyes, when Maya was removed from seat 1A, as if her own personal version of justice had been served. She thought about Bradley Cooper, the way he marched into the cabin, as if everything belonged to him, as if the presence of a woman of color in seat 1A was a personal offense. Maya thought of the passengers' smiles as they filmed the moment, the amusement in their eyes as they watched someone being publicly put down. Society had become accustomed to witnessing scenes like that. And because of that familiarity, Maya knew she was not fighting a moment, she was fighting a culture. Beside her, the man, drenched in heavy cologne, glanced at her, then at his screen, pretending not to be annoyed, yet rolling his eyes repeatedly. The teenager to her right had his music blasting. No one around her knew the woman forced into the back of the plane was one of the owners of the very airline they were sitting on. But Maya liked it that way. Invisibility was the perfect weapon to observe, to understand, to strike. A burst of laughter erupted from the row ahead. Lauren Mitchell was retelling her accomplishment. She argued with me. Clearly didn't belong in first class. I was just doing my job. More laughter followed, tightening Maya's chest, though her eyes stayed calm. Not because she felt no pain, she did it hurt so sharply she had to bite her lip to keep her breath steady. But pain never weakened her. Pain throughout Maya's life had always been raw material for resolve. She switched on the recorder on her phone. Each disdainful tone, every mocking laugh, every judgment Lauren uttered. Some people need to understand where they belong. Maya heard the sentence echo in her mind, as if someone were hammering a nail into memory. Her grandmother had been told that when she was thrown out of a lunch counter because of her skin color. Her mother had been told that when she looked for work. Maya had spent her entire life proving that sentence wrong. But the harsh reality was this. No matter how successful she became, there would always be someone who believed they had the right to decide her place in the world. Maya opened another tab, searching for the file on Bradley Cooper that Jordan's team had investigated. 3 harassment lawsuits, 2 racial discrimination complaints, 1 assault case buried under money. Perfect, Maya whispered. A man like that had dared call her a troublemaker. She began typing an email to Olivia Grant. Her tone sharp as a blade. When the video spreads online, do not respond. Do not release a statement. Do not apologize. Stay silent. Let them believe I am powerless. Let them believe they have won. Maya placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat return to its steady rhythm. She had long been used to being pushed to the back row. She had also long been used to climbing back up, higher, stronger, more dangerous. And this time she would not climb alone. She would pull the entire system with her. The plane drifted into calmer air. Maya closed her eyes briefly, letting the fury cool into cold steel. Not impulsive, not chaotic, but focused, the kind of focus only someone who understood the rules of the game better than anyone else could wield. 10 minutes later, Tyler appeared at the back of the cabin, quietly placing a bottle of water and a small snack in front of her. "I'm really sorry," he whispered. Maya saw the truth in his eyes, shame, helplessness, and the courage it took to do the right thing. "Thank you for doing what is right," she murmured. "Not many people do." Tyler bowed his head slightly, then slipped away. Maya knew that choice would change his life. Doing the right thing always came with a cost. But she also knew this she would not let him pay that cost alone. The cabin sank into quiet. Passengers slept, watched movies, complained. But in row 22, a woman was rewriting the history of an airline. Not with shouting, not with chaotic defiance, but with strategy, with calm, with a fury sharpened by years of being misjudged. Maya reopened her email and typed her final message to Richard Hale. "Tomorrow is not a meeting. Tomorrow is a complete reckoning." Then she closed her laptop and looked straight ahead. No one looked at her. No one knew who she was. But the sky knew. And the sky would witness how a woman pushed to the very last row would rise and force an entire system to kneel before the truth. Maya smiled faintly. They thought she was the victim, but they had just awakened the most dangerous person on the flight. The sky outside lay silent, but inside the airplane cabin, every tiny sound, the cry of a child, the clink of a spoon against a metal tray, the slow roll of the beverage cart along the aisle, all seemed stretched to the point of suffocation, as if the entire space were holding its breath with Maya Ellington. When night draped itself over the plane, and most passengers slipped into the restless sleep of the exhausted Maya, opened her eyes, her pupils glinting in the dark, like a predator, calculating the final strike. She had not slept for a single second. She could not, and she did not want to. The humiliation in first class had not cooled, but it was transforming into something else, into a plan, into a blade, into a burning declaration of war. The aircraft leveled off at 38,000 feet, but Maya's mind raced so fast it felt as though it might burst through the walls of her skull. With each passing minute, Jordan Reyes sent more data about Bradley and Lauren, confirmations of old lawsuits, internal notes, buried reports, complaints from black passengers who had been subjected to Lauren's excessive suspicion, overchecking of documents, or dismissive remarks like first class has its standards. Maya absorbed each line like a judge assembling evidence before a trial. She was not seeking revenge. She was seeking justice. But for someone who had lived a lifetime under discrimination, justice often resembled punishment. A faint ripple of laughter drifted down from the upper cabin. Maya heard Lauren's voice dripping with disdain and smugness, as if her so-called victory earlier was the crowning achievement of her career. She actually tried to sit tight. "I called security right away," Lauren said, not bothering to lower her voice, clearly wanting Maya to hear it. Another person laughed, the look on her face when they pulled her out, my God, priceless. In her cramped seat, Maya felt every blow, every sound, every shred of contempt tossed onto her. But instead of weakening her, it fed the fire rising inside her. She reached up to adjust her jacket, a small motion, but full of ownership, as if reminding herself, "You are Maya Ellington, co-owner of this airline. No one has the right to decide your worth." She turned on the recorder on her phone. Nothing was more damning than the real voice of someone exposing themselves. With each mocking laugh, she heard Maya grew more certain that Lauren Mitchell had not merely acted wrongly today. She had been wrong for years, wrong with countless people, and today was simply the breaking point of a long chain of unchecked misconduct. A shadow stopped beside row 22. This time it was Tyler Brooks. He bent slightly, placing a napkin and a bottle of water on her tray table. "Maya, I am so sorry for what happened," he whispered, afraid someone might hear. His eyes trembled, but they also carried a fire, a silent message that he knew what was right, and he wanted to stand on that side. Maya looked at him, her smile not soft but deep, like midnight waters. "Tyler, you did what no one else in this cabin dared to do. You stood on the side of the truth." Tyler flushed, embarrassed. I just knew it was wrong." "And you said so?" Maya replied, her voice slowing as if carving each word into his memory. "That makes you my most important witness." He swallowed hard and nodded, before hurrying back toward the rear of the plane. Maya watched him go, feeling clearly within herself that if a young attendant like Tyler had the courage to stand up, despite the risks, then she bore an even greater responsibility to protect people like him. When Maya returned to her laptop, she saw a new message from Jordan. "We have cabin camera footage. Not very detailed, but clear enough to show Bradley stepping in to demand she be removed from the seat. "We can use it." Maya closed her eyes for half a second. Her hands tightened, not from anger, but because she sensed a shift in the air, as if power was no longer in the hands of those laughing in the upper cabin. It was flowing toward her, piece by piece, testimony by testimony, every minute they slept, unaware of the coming storm. Beside her, the glow of the screen reflected on her face like a cold halo, not the light of blind rage, but of absolute clarity. Before sending her final email of the night, Maya scanned the cabin around her, the sleeping passengers, the people who had no idea that this flight would be mentioned in the highest boardroom of Atlantic skies, that their silence, their indifference, their judgmental stares had pushed the story to a point of no return. She turned back to the laptop and typed, "Richard, tomorrow is not just a meeting. Tomorrow is the restoration of order." When she hit send, a strange mixture filled her chest part. Relief. Part resolve, like the first step a climber places on a cliff, aware of the danger ahead, yet unable to turn back. In the darkness, the breathing of passengers blended with the engine's hum, creating the wordless soundtrack of the night before a storm. Maya placed her phone on her lap and closed her eyes not to sleep, but to hear her own heartbeat more clearly. They think they humiliated me. They do not know they just gave me the reason to bring down their entire system. The plane tilted slightly as it entered thinner air, and at 38,000 feet, where the world shrank into a long metal cabin, Maya Ellington opened her eyes again, no longer holding the darkness of someone insulted, but the steel of someone preparing for a silent uprising. Night drifted past the windows, but in seat 22, a revolution had already begun. Beat by beat, breath by breath, thought by thought. This was no longer about a seat. It was about dignity, about power, and above all about truth. Maya placed her hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat grow stronger, reminding her that even when pushed to the last row, she was still the true owner of this sky. And tomorrow morning, when she stepped into the glass-walled conference room at Heathrow, the world would know it. This was only the night before the storm. Because when the sun rose, Maya Ellington would no longer seek justice, she would create it. The grey morning light of London filtered through the thin mist covering Heathrow Airport as the plane's wheels touched down, but what truly ignited in that moment was not the sound of the engines. It was Maya Ellington's heart beating hard and cold with the awareness that the battle officially began now. As the plane decelerated, passengers around her pulled their luggage, checked their phones and sighed with exhaustion, while Maya stood with an almost unnerving calm, the kind of calm only found in someone who has already decided that today no one in that boardroom would walk out the same way they walked in. She moved down the narrow aisle, her cream coat hugging her shoulders like soft armor, but her eyes sharp as steel. When the curtain separating economy and first class slid open, she saw Bradley Cooper standing at seat 1A, holding up his phone and laughing with Lauren Mitchell, the lead flight attendant, who stood proudly as if she had saved the world the night before. "We handled it perfectly," Lauren said, her voice sweet but dripping with arrogance. "Passengers like her don't belong in this cabin." Bradley snorted. First class is not a public experiment. Both of them paused the moment Maya walked by, yet neither bothered to look at her. That disregard that imposed invisibility, as if she did not exist at all, was the exact reason this battle needed to happen. Maya walked past without a word, without turning her head, but every step she took delivered a silent promise. You will remember this moment for the rest of your lives. In immigration, the morning sounds of Heathrow echoed like a tense overture, rolling suitcases, loudspeakers, children crying footsteps on marble floors. Amid that chaos, Maya's phone buzzed non-stop with messages from Jordan Reyes and Olivia Grant. The video is spreading. 80,000 views in 30 minutes. Hashtag wrong seat, wrong woman is accelerating. The entire board is here. They think this is a ceremony to honor the crew. A slight curve appeared on Maya's lips. Perfect, she thought. Nothing terrifies the guilty more than believing they are about to be praised, only to discover they are standing before judgment. The automatic doors opened cold London air, hitting her face sharp and clean. The company's private car waited at the VIP exit, and as Maya settled into the back seat, she leaned her head gently against the rest, allowing herself, for the first time in many hours, to take a deep breath without urgency. The battle had begun when the plane took off, but it would end in the glass boardroom on the 3rd floor of the executive lounge. There the truth would be exposed. When the elevator doors opened into the lounge, Richard Hale, co-chair of the Airline, with thick silver hair and the steady eyes of a man who had weathered hundreds of crises, stood waiting for her. "Maya," he said softly, his voice warm but grave. "Are you ready?" "I have been ready since the moment I was forced out of seat 1. Maya replied. Together they walked down the long hallway, lined with deep blue carpet, the morning light bouncing off glass walls, making it feel as though each step led deeper into the center of an approaching storm. The transparent boardroom appeared. Through the glass, Maya saw Lauren Mitchell, seated near the head of the table, arms crossed, confidently, lips shaped into a carefully painted smile. Beside her were 2 senior attendants, chatting with relaxed expressions, as if they were moments away from receiving medals. At the far end, Chief Executive Officer Daniel Mercer paced nervously while board members whispered to each other, their expressions a mix of curiosity and fatigue. Maya stood outside the door for a few seconds to observe. Smug faces, complacent eyes, people who believed they held power. They did not know that the truth, much like morning light, would cut through every layer of illusion. Richard pushed the door open. The room fell silent. A thick, heavy silence, the kind where you could almost hear the heartbeat of every person at the table. Maya stepped inside, calm, slow, each step pressing into the air like a rising pressure. Lauren looked up and saw Maya in simple clothes, not a suit, not heels, but rumpled travel wear. The smile on her face snapped, as if slapped away. Chief Executive Officer Daniel Mercer's jaw dropped, his phone slipping from his hand. Several board members straightened instantly, eyes widening as if they had seen a ghost. Only one person dared meet Maya's gaze with clarity: Tyler Brooks, standing quietly in the corner, hands clenched, eyes filled with relief. Maya placed her laptop bag on the table, stood tall, did not sit, did not bow, did not greet anyone with the usual formalities of a high-level meeting. She simply looked directly at Lauren and spoke a single sentence that shattered the atmosphere like cracking glass. "Ms. Mitchell, would you like to explain anything about what happened last night?" Lauren's mouth opened, but no sound escaped. Her eyes widened, panic spreading through them like oil across the sea. "Last night," a flight attendant whispered. What happened, Maya did not need to answer. She took out her phone, opened the recording, and pressed play. Lauren's voice filled the room sharp, clear, dripping with contempt. "She does not belong here. First class is not a testing ground." A sharp hiss cut through the room as someone slid their chair back. Daniel Mercer's expression shifted 3 times in a single heartbeat. Lauren sank into her seat, as if her body were trying to shrink away from itself. Maya looked around the room, her gaze cold, but not angry, because anger was emotion, and today she was not emotion. She was judgment. I sat in the correct seat. Maya said each word, landing like a hammer, and your crew forced me into row 22 without checking the ticket, without verifying any information, based solely on prejudice. Her eyes flicked to Lauren. Your prejudice has not only targeted me, it has targeted countless black passengers throughout your 17 years of service. A board member whispered, "My God." I saw the video. Maya continued, her voice low but solid as steel. When passengers are treated based on the assumption that they do not belong in a space that is not an individual mistake, that is a broken system, and today we address that system. Lauren opened her mouth to defend herself, but Maya raised her hand, light as a feather, yet commanding like an order. "You will have your chance to speak," Maya said. "But before you do, remember that this meeting has every piece of evidence." Then she turned her gaze to Tyler. "Tyler Brooks, please stand." Tyler rose, his voice trembling, but clear as he recounted everything, every name, every sentence, every moment Lauren mocked Maya after expelling her from the seat. Each word from Tyler hammered another nail into the door, closing on the Lauren Mitchell era. When Tyler finished, Maya locked her eyes on Lauren and delivered the sentence that froze the entire room. "Ms. Mitchell, you are terminated, effective immediately." Lauren gasped, her eyes bulging with the beginnings of tears, but Maya did not let that soften her. No one cried when passengers were humiliated. No one cried when their right to sit in their rightful seat was questioned. Additionally, Maya continued, Chief Executive Officer Daniel Mercer will answer for ignoring 17 complaints involving discrimination. Daniel froze, his face draining of color. Maya turned on the screen projector and presented each complaint, each ignored report, each black passenger singled out for suspicious tickets. Every piece of evidence cut deeper, and with the sharp composure of someone who had suffered more than enough, Maya delivered the final line of the session, a line no one in the room would ever forget. If we cannot guarantee that every passenger, every color, every background is treated equally on our aircrafts, then we do not deserve to call ourselves an airline. No one spoke. No one dared breathe too loudly. And Maya knew this was only the beginning. She had not come to fix a mistake. She had come to rebuild the entire system. And today, in the cold, bright glass boardroom, the truth had finally been unlocked. The meeting had not even begun to cool when the glass door swung open and 3 airport security officers stepped inside, followed by Bradley Cooper, his perfectly groomed blonde hair now disheveled with rage, his face flushed red as if he still could not comprehend what was happening. What kind of meeting is this? Why was I held at customs? What is she pulling Bradley all but roared, pointing straight at Maya as if he were still in the first-class cabin, where everyone bent their backs to his every word. But this time that finger did not shake Maya. It only made her calmer, because no one else in this room knew that Bradley's downfall had begun the moment he stole seat 1A and laughed when Maya was pushed to row 22. "Mr. Cooper, Maya," said her voice, low and smooth like a freshly sharpened blade, "you are here to answer for your actions last night, and for many actions before, that which you believed were hidden." Bradley let out a loud laugh, sharp and hollow, like a glass hitting marble. Who do you think you are? A passenger? A troublemaker on a plane? You have no right to question me." Maya met his eyes without blinking. "I am the co-owner of Atlantic Skies." The entire room stopped breathing. Bradley stumbled half a step back, as if someone had punched him in the stomach. You are what Maya did not answer. Instead, she opened her laptop, pressed a key, and the large screen behind her lit up with video from the airplane cabin. On the screen, Bradley stood in front of Maya, pointing at seat 1A, his voice loud and unmistakable. "She does not deserve to sit here. I am the one who pays for this cabin." The video continued. Lauren appeared, bowing her head to Bradley, never checking Maya's ticket, ordering her out of the seat. Then the contemptuous line, "First class is not a testing ground," and finally Bradley laughing as Maya walked by. Every second of the video was a blade, and this blade did not cut only Bradley. It cut into the reputation of the entire airline, into the trust of passengers, and into the mask Bradley had worn for years. The boardroom grew so heavy, it felt like the air had been sucked out. Bradley stood frozen, his mouth open, his face shifting from red to white to grey, as if he were staring at the shadow of death. "I didn't mean what Maya asked, her voice, not loud, but pressing on everyone's chest. Did not mean to discriminate, did not mean to abuse your influence, did not mean to expel a passenger from her seat without checking her ticket, simply because you believed you were more deserving." Bradley's fist tightened. "You are twisting things." That video does not show Maya did not let him finish. "Mr. Cooper," she said, her eyes ice cold, "calm yourself. I have not brought this to court. I am only beginning." Then she glanced at Jordan, standing in the corner. Jordan stepped forward and placed a thick stack of files on the table. "This," Maya said, "is your record." Bradley stepped back fully now, his eyes narrowing, as if the lights in the room had suddenly become too bright. Maya did not look at him. She looked straight at the board, at the people who held the future of the airline. In the past 12 years, Maya began her voice slow and final. Like the reading of a verdict, Mr. Cooper has been involved in 6 business dealings with Atlantic Skies. In those 6 dealings, 3 times he pressured staff for unreasonable priority. Twice he made derogatory comments toward women. And once he was recorded demanding another passenger be moved because he felt that person did not fit the image of first class. The room erupted in horrified whispers. Bradley shouted, "There is no proof." Jordan pressed play on a recording from the year 2016. Bradley's voice echoed through the room, clear as day. "This passenger looks cheap. I do not want to sit next to them." One board member covered their mouth. Another exhaled sharply, but Maya was not finished. "And here," she said, "turning to the final page is the investigative file of 3 women who accused you of harassment cases, silenced with money." Bradley lunged forward, shouting, "You have no right to dig that up." Maya lifted her head, her eyes darkening, not with anger, but with absolute resolve. "I have every right when your actions threaten the reputation of the airline I own. A precise, lethal blow." Bradley's hands trembled, but Maya still was not done. She played footage from airport security that morning, showing Bradley yelling at customs officers, threatening to sue them, claiming he had friends on the board of this airline. His words echoed through the room like gunfire. "Mr. Cooper," Maya said, her voice sharp as steel, "here is my final decision. Atlantic Skies is terminating all collaboration with your investment fund. You are permanently banned from first class and all priority services, and your file will be forwarded to our partners at Singapore Airlines so they may decide for themselves whether they wish to continue working with you. Bradley swayed like a man struck by lightning, but there was one final blow, the one Maya had saved for the perfect moment. And she said, locking eyes with him, "I will make this entire incident public in the airline's upcoming transparency report." Bradley recoiled as if shot. "You cannot do that." Maya smiled softly, the smile of someone who had already won completely. "You cannot stop it." Then she delivered the sentence that froze the room so completely it felt as though the air had vanished. "When you pushed me out of seat 1A, you thought it was just a seat. But you collapsed your entire empire. No one moved. No one dared breathe." Bradley Cooper stood there, a man who once wielded power, reduced to something bare, trembling and desperate. But Maya did not look at him again. He no longer deserved a single second of her attention. She turned to the board and said, "Let us continue. There is much more in this system to fix." And with that, Maya Ellington stepped into the next phase of her revolution, leaving Bradley Cooper standing in the ruins of his own making. News traveled faster than the descent of the overnight flight. While Maya Ellington was still standing in the boardroom, surrounded by dozens of files, pieces of evidence, and faces drained pale with shock, the world outside had already begun to shake. The passenger videos recorded in the cabin had been posted online only hours earlier, yet they were spreading at explosive speed, like a spark dropped into a barrel of dry fuel. The hashtag "Wrong Seat, Wrong Woman" climbed into the global top 5 in 3 hours and kept rising until it hit number 1. No one knew her name. No one knew her identity, but everyone recognized the injustice captured in a 27-second clip, a black woman being forced out of her first-class seat simply because a white man declared that she does not belong here. Viewers were furious. They shared. They commented. And the media began calling the office of Atlantic Skies 15 minutes before the board meeting ended. Olivia Grant, the communications director, had her phone ringing non-stop from CNN to BBC to Al Jazeera to Fox News. But Maya had given one instruction: silence. No statements, no explanations, no apologies. Silence so that public outrage could erupt on its own. Silence so people would begin asking, "Who is the woman in the video?" Silence so the world would build its own storm that Maya would step into with complete clarity and control. In the boardroom, as the members began discussing media handling, Maya raised her hand, signaling them to stop. "Do not say anything," she said calmly. "If you speak too early, you will speak incorrectly." Richard Hale looked at her and immediately understood. He said quietly, "Maya, they are asking whether we are racist." "And what do you intend to say?" Maya replied, her eyes scanning every face in the room. "That we are not, when the video clearly shows the opposite." Silence weighed down the room. At that moment, Tyler Brooks received a notification and held his phone up for Maya to see. "Maya, you need to look at this." Her name had not been released, but online communities had already labeled her as the woman in 1A. One comment read, "Who is she?" "I want to know her story." Another said, "Clear discrimination. Atlantic Skies must respond." Another one, "I hope she speaks up and tells the whole truth." Then another video started circulating, showing Maya standing in the aisle, Lauren pointing at her, and forcing her to leave her seat, Bradley's contempt, the passenger's whispers. Every piece of audio and every expression made the clip one of the year's most infuriating videos. Maya watched the screen, her eyes not angry, not shaken, only deep and still, like the sea before a storm. "We do not follow the media," Maya said. "We lead them." Chief Executive Officer Daniel Mercer looked at Maya with a mixture of worry and admiration. "So what is your plan?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "Not a plan, a responsibility." She walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind the witnesses of the most severe internal reckoning in the airline's history. As she moved down the hallway, Olivia rushed after her. "Maya, BBC wants a live interview. CNN wants exclusive rights to your story. They want it immediately because the hashtag is hitting millions of views." Maya stopped. The dim lights reflected across her face, making her eyes look like they held both a storm cloud and a lightning strike at the same time. Olivia Maya said, "Prepare an interview for me, but not now." Olivia frowned. Then when Maya took a deep breath, not to steady herself, but to ready the blow she was about to deliver. "When I am ready to tell the truth about the culture inside this company," Maya said, "I will not come to defend Atlantic skies. I will come to force it to change." A few hours later, Maya sat in the car heading toward the company headquarters in central London. By then, social media had turned her into the symbol of a heated conversation about equality and bias in the airline industry. On TikTok, a young woman said, "I was kicked out of a premium seat once because they did not believe my ticket was real. This video woke me up." On Twitter, a famous actor commented, "If what we are seeing is true, Atlantic skies must be held accountable." But among the thousands of voices, one comment made Maya pause for a second. If she stays silent, the world will forget. If she speaks, the world will change. Maya was not someone easily swayed by emotion, but that line struck something inside her, not pressure but truth. She knew that every word spoken by a black woman would be scrutinized down to the last period. But she also knew silence was no longer an option. When the car stopped in front of the headquarters, Maya opened the door and stepped out, her black hair tied back neatly, her stride straight and precise, her eyes fixed on the glass revolving doors ahead. She looked like an arrow released from a bow, unstoppable, unwavering, and incapable of missing her mark. Inside, employees whispered as she walked by, some standing, as if waiting for the person who would deliver clarity in the storm engulfing the company. Maya did not look at anyone. She headed straight into the communications room, where Olivia already had the large monitor, displaying the latest news. The Atlantic Skies logo appeared on at least 14 major news networks. Maya folded her arms and watched the flashing headlines, "Airline faces accusations of racial discrimination." "The mystery woman forced out of first class speaks. Who is the woman in one?" Olivia turned to her. "Maya, one sentence from you and they will know exactly who you are." Maya stared at the screen, her eyes free of fear, filled only with one thing: conviction. "I will speak," Maya said, "but I will not speak as a victim." She turned to Olivia, her voice firm and burning. "I will speak as the owner of this airline." That evening, in a small room, transformed into a temporary studio, Maya Ellington sat before the CNN camera. The lights came on. The lens centered on her. The reporter asked the first question, "Miss Ellington, what do you want to say to the world that is watching?" Maya straightened her hands, clasped on the table, her voice low and steady, each word striking through decades of silence. "I am not speaking to defend myself. I am speaking to end an unjust culture that thousands of people have suffered under." Then she delivered the sentence that shook social media and plunged Atlantic Skies into the greatest crisis in its history. and I am saying this as the co-owner of the airline. Within 3 minutes, the interview clip hit 2 million views. Within 1 hour, Atlantic skies became the center of a global debate, and within a single night, Maya Ellington, the woman pushed to row 22 rows as a symbol of change seen by the entire world. But for Maya, this was only the beginning. The sky was storming, and she would not avoid it. She would lead it. Maya's interview didn't simply ignite social media. It became the spark that pushed Atlantic skies into the most violent crisis in its entire history. After only 1 night, the airline's stock plunged. 17% partners demanded immediate explanations, and dozens of boycott campaigns spread across TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. But while everyone believed the core of the scandal was the discrimination Maya faced, another video suddenly surfaced, one even more shocking. A passenger had recorded a black man in Dallas being forced out of his premium seat because he did not look like a high-tier passenger. What enraged the public even more was the timing of the incident only 2 days after Maya's. The world understood instantly this was not an accident. This was a culture. And Maya, who had just become a symbol of change, had to face a far more painful truth that the airline she owned half of was rotting deeper than she ever imagined. In the boardroom the next morning, the air hung thick like invisible smoke pressed onto everyone's shoulders. The large screen lit up, playing the Dallas video, a black doctor named Dr. Samuel Price being forced out of his seat because the attendant did not believe the ticket was real. The attendant's voice echoed with suspicion. "You say you are a doctor, and you are flying premium. I need further verification." The surrounding passengers murmured. A white woman said, "Why not just let the man sit? We are already late." But the attendant did not listen. She moved Samuel to the back of the cabin and gave his seat to someone else. When the video ended, the room fell silent like a cemetery. Every eye turned to Maya, the woman who had just declared to the entire world that Atlantic skies would change. Now her airline had repeated the same injustice within 48 hours. Daniel Mercer cleared his throat, forcing a stiff smile. "Maya, I believe this is just another isolated incident." A misunderstanding, Maya cut him off immediately. "How many incidents like this do you call isolated?" Daniel swallowed hard. "We do not have the full data, I do." Maya said, placing dozens of customer reports, complaints and emails on the table, all dug up overnight. 147 cases of discrimination in 3 years, every single one dismissed by management. And you call that isolated? Daniel's face drained of color. A board member whispered, "Maya, we need time to review." "We no longer have time," Maya replied. "The entire world is watching. If we do not act now, this airline will not survive the quarter." She stood, her eyes sweeping across the room, as if cutting through every layer of denial they had worn for years. It is not only Maya in the video who was harmed. It is not only Samuel in the Dallas clip who was humiliated. Hundreds of people have been treated as if they didn't deserve to exist in this cabin. Maya's gaze sharpened into a blade. "And I will not allow that to continue in an airline that bears my name." Richard Hale looked at Maya and nodded. He knew she was about to do something no one had ever dared. That afternoon, Maya flew directly to Dallas to meet Dr. Samuel Price. The entire city seemed to greet her with a mixture of curiosity and hope. When she stepped into the small cafe where they were meeting, Samuel was already there, his hands clasped together. His face tired, yet his eyes steady. "Thank you for coming," Samuel said softly. his voice heavy with the weight of a man who had endured too much. I did not think anyone from the airline would care. Maya sat down, placing her hand on the table, her gaze steady, telling him without words. I hear you. I see you. I am not here to apologize on behalf of the airline, Maya said slowly. I am here to ask you to tell me the truth, not so I can defend us, but so I can understand what must be changed at the root. Samuel studied her for a long time, as if trying to determine whether she was speaking from the heart or from a corporate script. Eventually he sighed and began to tell his story. He spoke of being doubted because he wore an expensive watch they assumed he stole it. He spoke of being asked repeatedly whether his ticket was purchased with a real card. He spoke of the sharp glances every time he stepped into a first-class cabin. I always have to brace myself, Samuel said, his voice cracking. Even though I am a heart surgeon, even though I have saved hundreds of lives, I still have to prove I am worthy just because of my skin color. Maya listened each sentence, striking her like a blade, because she understood. Every feeling, every stare, every quiet cruelty the world tried to hide. How did you feel when you were removed from your seat? Maya asked, not as an executive, but as someone who shared the wound. Samuel closed his eyes. 1 second, 2 seconds. Then he said, I felt invisible. 1 word. Yet enough for Maya to feel anger surge through her veins like a current. No one deserved to become invisible, not in a space they had paid to be respected in. Maya placed her hand gently over Samuel's. I promise you, she said, her voice deepening like a vow carved into stone, I will not allow anyone else to feel that way again. Samuel looked at her and gave a faint, wounded, hopeful smile. If it is you, he said, I believe it can happen. In that moment, Maya understood this fight was no longer about a few bad employees or a flawed culture. She was facing an entire system embedded in the airline industry, a system that believed power belonged to those who looked like power. But she also knew she had an advantage they never expected. She had the truth. She had power. And she had a world looking to her as a symbol of change. When Maya stepped out of the cafe, the Texas sunlight struck her hair, making it glow like a long ribbon of fire. And in that fire, she walked with one conviction: no one deserves to be invisible. This was no longer her personal battle. This was the battle of everyone who had ever been treated as if they did not belong in the sky. And Maya Ellington, the woman once pushed to row 22, was about to turn her own airline into a place where everyone, every skin color, every background would finally be seen. On the morning after her meeting with Dr. Samuel Price, Maya Ellington returned to the Atlantic Skies headquarters like a sentient storm, carrying with her every piece of determination, every fact and every shard of anger, sharpened into cold metal. The glass tower that once cast its reflection over the bustling streets of central London no longer felt like an untouchable symbol of power. Today, it felt like a patient in critical condition. And Maya was the surgeon holding the scalpel. The moment she stepped through the lobby, hundreds of employees turned their eyes toward her, not with the indifference she once received, but with a blend of respect, anxiety, and hope. To them, Maya was no longer just a shareholder, no longer just the woman in a viral video. She was proof that one voice could shake an entire system. But to Maya, those gazes didn't matter. What mattered were the faces trying to avoid her eyes, the mid-level managers who had buried complaints for years, the people who had allowed discrimination to thrive, the ones who believed silence could protect them. Today they would learn the costliest lesson of their lives. Maya opened the leadership meeting at 9 o'clock. Not a single seat was empty. The silence in the room was so dense, it felt almost tangible. Daniel Mercer, the chief executive officer, sat at the head of the table, his expression tight, his hands clasped, as if to hide the tremor beneath them. Richard Hale stood by Maya's side, a steady pillar. When Maya rose to speak, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. There was no gavel, no formal introduction. She opened the slide deck, and the screen lit up with words bold enough to send a chill down every spine in the room. Full system evaluation state of emergency. In the past 3 years, Maya said her voice steady like tempered steel. We received 147 complaints involving discriminatory or unfair behavior. She pressed a button. A crimson graph appeared. Not a single one was handled according to standard. Several leaders lowered their heads. One attempted a strained smile. We did the best we could with limited resources. Limited resources, Maya cut in instantly, or limited priorities. The room fell silent. Maya continued. It is not only passengers who have suffered. Employees have suffered as well. Those who tried to do the right thing were threatened. Those who violated rules were protected. Her gaze moved to Daniel without hesitation. And all of this happened under your management. Daniel opened his mouth, but Maya raised a hand, denying him the chance to defend himself. You will have the opportunity to speak. But first, let me show everyone what we are actually facing. The next slide appeared Tyler Brooks, tense but resolute during his testimony the day before. This is Tyler, Maya said, the one who dared to speak the truth when everyone else stayed silent. Tyler flinched slightly as all eyes turned toward him, some filled with resentment, some with discomfort. Maya changed the slide. And these, she said, are the people who hid the truth. A long list of names filled the screen. The room seemed to lose its breath. Faces blanched. Someone dropped a pen. Another inhaled sharply. Starting today, Maya said, everyone on this list is suspended pending investigation. A ripple of panic burst across the room. One person rose, trying to maintain composure. Maya, if you suspend all of them, who will run the departments? Maya replied without blinking. The honest people will run them. Silence fell so deeply, it seemed the walls absorbed it. Maya looked toward Tyler, the only one who had chosen truth from the beginning. Mr. Brooks, she called. Tyler stood startled. Effective immediately, you are Interim Deputy Director of Passenger Services. You will be directly involved in restructuring. Tyler's eyes widened. He bowed slightly, his voice trembling yet firm. I will do my best. Maya nodded. I know. She turned back to the room. We are rebuilding from the root. No more burying complaints. No more hollow apologies. No more protecting toxic employees. The next slide appeared. 3 new control layers. Maya read them clearly. Layer 1, complaints recorded directly by the AI system without human filtering. Layer 2, files sent immediately to an independent investigation unit under my supervision. Layer 3, passenger council, an advisory panel made up of passengers who have experienced discrimination with the authority to recommend disciplinary action. Someone at the table blurted out, Passenger Council, Maya, no airline has done that. Maya turned toward him, her gaze so sharp he instinctively leaned back. That is why we will be the first. Then she revealed the final slide. And here is the person I want to appoint to the first council. The image of Dr. Samuel Price appeared on the screen. A wave of whispers filled the room. Is it really him? Did he actually agree? Maya said Dr. Price is not just a victim. He is a symbol of what must change, and he will help us change it correctly. Several people lowered their heads. Some hid their emotions, others could not. But Maya did not allow the silence to linger. "No airline survives by hiding the truth," she said. "We survive by confronting it." And at that exact moment, timed perfectly, as if history itself had arranged it, the door opened, and Samuel Price walked in his expression calm, yet carrying the quiet authority of someone who had suffered enough to fear nothing. The entire room turned to him. Samuel nodded respectfully toward Maya, as if the two had just signed a pact, without needing any paper at all, a pact to transform the entire system. Maya faced the leaders, her voice resonant and metallic. "If any of you are not ready for this change, you may leave the room now." No one moved. No one dared rise. Maya stepped to the head of the table, placed both hands on the surface, and leaned in slightly, her voice dropping low, yet carrying across every corner of the room. "I am not here to patch the old. I am here to build the new." And in that moment, everyone in the room understood there was no turning back, no compromise, no gray zone. Atlantic Skies would be rebuilt from the ground up, because the woman who had once been pushed to row 22 was now standing at the helm, and she would not stop until the sky belonged to everyone. No discrimination, no bias, no one made invisible. Maya left the boardroom like a commander declaring a purification campaign, and behind her, an entire empire trembled, but also began to transform. That afternoon, as news of the internal restructuring spread outward, public reaction erupted like a silent yet earth-shaking explosion. From social media to television broadcasts, everything revolved around one burning question: is Maya Ellington destroying Atlantic Skies or saving it from the edge of collapse? Maya did not answer a single reporter. She knew that any justification at this moment would only create noise. What she needed was not to explain, but to keep striking at the deeper roots, the places where true power had begun to tremble at the fear of being exposed. In the temporary operations room, Jordan walked in with a tense expression. "Maya, there's a major problem. 3 minor shareholders are joining forces to organize a no-confidence vote. They say you're destabilizing the company." Maya was not surprised. She opened her laptop, her voice calm to the point of chilling. Exactly as expected. "When the system is shaken, the ones who benefited from it will shout the loudest." Jordan tightened his grip on the files in his hand. "If they convince just 2 more you'll lose your seat." Maya paused her typing and looked up. "Then I will speak to each one personally." That evening, Maya entered an unscheduled virtual meeting with 7 shareholders. No administrative notice, no pleasantries, no ceremonial greetings. When their faces appeared on the screen, Maya did not wait for their introductions. "If any of you want Atlantic Skies to survive and continue growing, then we must decide today, protect a temporary reputation or build a sustainable future." One shareholder, Mr. Daniels, a silver-haired man with a distrustful tone, said, "You're firing people left and right. The stock dropped 4%. This is unnecessary risk." Maya responded instantly, sharp but steady. "Risk, the greatest risk is maintaining a rotten system and waiting for the engine to explode at 30,000 feet. I am defusing the bomb before it erupts, not after." Another shareholder, Ms. Ramirez, leaned toward her camera. "I just want to know, do you have a long-term plan, or is this all an emotional reaction to your own mistreatment?" Maya didn't flinch. She looked straight at the camera. "Both. I was mistreated, yes. But mistreatment does not destroy an airline. Toxic culture does. And I, being the only person in this meeting who has actually been dragged out of her own seat, have the right and the responsibility to dismantle it." Silence stretched across the screen. Maya continued, her voice low, like an order carved in stone. I have rebuilt 3 companies from ashes. I do not act on impulse. I act on strategy. And the strategy is clean. Rebuild. Rise. She leaned back slightly, her gaze cold, yet unwavering. If anyone here wants to keep a system that is already decaying, vote me out. But remember this, when the next scandal erupts, you will have to answer to every shareholder for why you chose silence over action. A younger shareholder, Mr. Stewart, slowly nodded. She's right. I withdraw my vote. Another followed. Then a third. In less than 5 minutes, the rebellion collapsed completely. When the screen finally went dark, Jordan exhaled in relief, but Maya simply closed her eyes for one brief second. Not out of ease, but because she knew this was only the beginning of a new battle. She had not won. She simply had not lost. Late that night, Maya returned to her apartment. When she set her bag down on the chair, her phone rang. The name on the screen made her chest tighten for a moment. Samuel Price. Maya, I just wanted to say, I saw the internal briefing today. Samuel said, his voice deeper and more sincere than ever before. Thank you. Not for what you did for me, but for what you're doing for the people who will fly after me. Maya leaned against the kitchen counter, her eyes drifting toward the night skyline of New York. Samuel, I am not sure this will change the entire industry, but I know I can change Atlantic skies, and I will see it through. Samuel replied, his voice carrying the quiet strength of someone rediscovering hope. You are fighting a battle many of us gave up on long ago. But watching you fight reminds me that I once believed in fairness. Maya went silent, not because she lacked words, but because something in her chest trembled with an emotion she rarely allowed herself to feel hope. After the call ended, Maya opened her laptop and looked at the list of reforms she had just approved. Each item was a small war. Each decision was a strike against the massive machine that had run the wrong way for so many years. And she knew every strike came with a price. Exhaustion was building. Stress was eating away her hours of sleep. Pressure tightened around her ribs every time she opened her eyes. But she also knew another truth. No one changes the world in comfort. And Maya Ellington had never been born for comfort. She was born to tear down, rebuild, and lift others higher than they ever imagined they could rise. That night, as the city fell silent, Maya closed her laptop and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, we fight again." 3 weeks after the internal earthquake, Maya Ellington walked into the Atlantic Skies headquarters with a strange feeling, not the vigilance she carried every day, but something resembling hope, though not clear enough for her to grasp completely. She passed through the grand lobby, once filled with scrutinizing stares, now full of glances that blended caution with respect. Employees bowed their heads to her, not out of fear, but because they saw something in her resolve, conviction, and something they had never seen in any leader before, an uncompromising sense of justice. Rebecca approached, quickly handing Maya a tablet. The updated system report. Complaints have dropped 47% in 3 weeks. 24-hour resolution rates have increased from 19% to 78%. And Maya, you need to see this. Rebecca opened the screen. It was a video recorded by a passenger that morning on Flight A, S-212. A young flight attendant, Jasmine Clark, stood before a loud, insistent, middle-aged passenger who was demanding a seat that did not belong to him. Jasmine did not shake, did not show fear, did not allow bias to interfere. She spoke clearly and firmly. "Sir, all passengers are to be treated the same. If you have a complaint, I will gladly address it, but you cannot demand that another passenger give up their seat when they hold a valid ticket." The man faltered, stepped back, and what froze Maya in place was that the entire cabin applauded. Applauded. Not mockingly, not for the sake of capturing a viral clip, but as support for a flight attendant who stood on the side of what was right. Maya tightened her grip on the tablet, not in anger, but because the surge of emotion rising in her chest was so strong she needed a breath to steady herself. They had learned. They had changed, and that change did not come from speeches or orders. It came from her resetting the moral spine of the airline. Rebecca whispered, "Maya, you did this." Maya shook her head lightly. No, Jasmine did, and the people who clapped did. But deep inside, she knew if she had chosen silence that day on the plane, if she had not stood up, had not thrown the entire system into the fire of restructuring this morning, never would have happened. She walked straight into the boardroom. The board of directors was waiting not to stop her this time, but to hear the report of cultural transformation. When Maya stepped inside, they all stood. Not out of formality, not out of routine, but out of recognition. James smiled. "Maya, we saw the video from flight AS-212. I think it's time to say this. You did not just save Atlantic skies. You made it better than it has ever been." Maya looked around the room. These were the same faces that once doubted her, feared her, resisted her. Now they looked like people standing on the threshold of a historic turning point. She began the meeting with a steady voice. "I did not come here to be praised. I came to make sure that what happened to me, to Dr. Samuel Price, and to hundreds of other passengers never happens again." She presented charts, reports, a 12-month training program, transparency enforcement strategies, and the new disciplinary framework. As she spoke, the room remained completely silent. No interruptions, no objections. They no longer saw Maya as a threat. They saw her as the new foundation of the airline. The meeting ended with a single decision, simple yet monumental. Maya Ellington was officially appointed CEO, no longer interim. When she stepped out of the room, James placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it. Not just for yourself, but for everyone." Maya let out a small smile, a rare one, carrying exhaustion, but also unmistakable strength. "James, this is only the beginning." That afternoon, Maya went to the airport for unannounced inspections. No alerts, no preparation. And when she stepped onto the aircraft bearing the Atlantic Skies logo flight attendant, Jasmine Clark straightened her posture, her smile bright. "Welcome back, CEO Ellington," Maya replied warmly. "Thank you, and thank you for this morning." Jasmine's eyes glistened. "I only did what was right. That," Maya said, "is why you are the future of this airline." Maya took her seat in 1A, the seat that once stripped her of dignity, yet also became the place where her entire revolution began. She looked out the window. The sky outside was impossibly blue. A shade of blue she had never noticed during the past months of fighting. Perhaps because the sky had not changed, only the people on the ground had changed the way they looked at it. As the plane lifted into the air, Maya closed her eyes not to rest, but to fully feel the journey she had endured, the wounds, the battles, the decisions that nearly broke her, and the people who rose alongside her. Today was not victory. Today was proof that fighting is never meaningless, that one person, when refusing silence, can change the entire sky. And Maya Ellington finally saw the sky she had been fighting for. not just blue, but free. From the perspective of an expert in organizational culture and power dynamics, Maya Ellington's journey reveals a truth that every modern company must confront. Systems do not change because of training sessions or slogans on a wall. They change only when someone courageous enough is willing to pay the price to drag light into places where darkness has lingered for far too long. Maya did not become a hero because she was the strongest, but because she was the most unwavering, because she understood that fairness does not simply appear on its own. It must be built through truth, accountability, and sustained courage day after day. If this story resonates with you, like the video to help spread the spirit of standing up to injustice, and subscribe to follow more journeys where an ordinary individual dares to shift an entire system. And comment the phrase, "Stand up," to remind one another that change always begins with the person who refuses to bow.